Okay, of course, it's time for us to start our first discussion this morning, and we're looking at spousal violence. The National Population Commission says Nigeria has one of the highest rates of domestic violence in Africa. A major arm of it is spousal abuse, which refers to any form of maltreatment between couples.
Now, spousal abuse comes in different forms. Let's look at a few examples. Abuse through sex, physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, among others. Now, in some cases, it could result to death.
Statistics of spousal abuse go largely unrecorded due to the stigma and silence surrounding the issue. All right, joining us now is a rights activist, Mary Koku, and also with us is a psychologist, Dr. Adesoji Banji, who will be looking or tried to look into the mind of the abuser. And of course, this morning we need to underscore the point that we're not resting on women as the, as a victim of domestic violence, but of course it cuts both ways. Good to have you again, gentleman and lady. Now, maybe we should start with the psychiatrist. I mean, you'll be able to paint a good picture for us. Yeah. What are the factors really that lead to spousal abuse? And it seems to be on the rise in Nigeria.
I think for me, it's always been there. It's just now we have more celebrities getting involved. So there's now we're in the age of the social media when everyone has a platform to talk about whatever issues that's going on. So what are the main causes of spousal abuse? I think, for one, it's a poor understanding of what marriage is about and what the role of a man and a woman is supposed to be. I believe that most men who are going through situations of frustration, unemployment, poverty. It's also been found to be more common with people who have very low educational status, though we do know that there are some people with high degrees that do have this. Then it's also been found that people who experienced spousal abuse as children tend to repeat what they learned. And then more importantly is alcohol abuse. And then when there is some form of mental illness that has not been talked about or is unspoken or is repressed. And then you have a person who's also stressed, who lashes out and is angry about many, many things. And so sometimes the person to lash out at is the person that is closest to you, because that's the person that you're most vulnerable to that person. So it's more likely for you to lash out at that person and vent your anger. So those are some of the reasons why men and women do it.
Well, it's quite complicated when you see it from different facets and faces and all of that. Mary, let me come to you on this. He mentioned something and said that a poor understanding of what marriage or maybe even relationship, because even before marriage, friends, relationship, they face this thing as the case may be. We understand that knowledge has increased because people are exposed to all sorts of understanding, all sorts of knowledge and all of that. So how do we put this together? How do we juxtapose the fact that knowledge has increased but people have poorer understanding of what relationship or marriage is?
Knowledge has increased. To what extent?
All right.
And what kind of knowledge has really been increased? When we look at the issue of domestic violence, I think that to a great extent what my co has said makes a whole lot of sense. But in all of that, at the heart of it all is the root of its core is actually more of a traditional attitude to issues like this. It's some kind of culture that permits violence. And that culture is such that has placed the man in a position where he sees his wife as subordinate. If I take it down to a culture where children are beaten by the parents in the way of correcting the child. Yes. So the parents feel you need to correct the child, you need to flog that child to reset him. In the same vein, when a man culturally feels the wife is below him, she's acquired. There's also that tendency to begin to see the wife just like you see the child, and when she errs, you want to flog her, you want to smack her, you want to slap her in a way to correct. Because if you, the recent case of a known actress,
yeah, Nollywood
you could hear what the husband is saying. She failed to cook for me. I mean, isn't that crazy? Somebody, it's not your child. She didn't cook, and she went to a party or something. Is that a reason to kill somebody? To want to really harm that person?
Is it possible then that there might be some underlying issues, and so some of this, she didn't cook, she wasn't there to be nice
it's just
to
the
me.
climax of some
Those
of
are
the
just-
Yeah, it's the climax. But you see, if that thinking, if that mindset, that the way you can correct that person, you can talk it over, isn't it? Like matured adults. Like your significant other, there's no reason whatsoever to lay a hand on her.
So, Adesoji, let me bring this to you. She mentioned something that's really vital there.
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't cook for me. Something
Yeah.
as flimsy as that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there other underlying factors here playing out?
Yes.
You know, that now the opportunity provides itself and all hell breaks loose.
I think even in the story of the celebrity actress and all
Yes.
that, the husband clearly...
And that's only just one of
just
them.
one of them. Clearly stated that there had been a track record, a history, a prolonged history of several instances of neglect, distrust, and things like that. For me, the thing is, the act, like the proverbial cliche says, that it is the final straw that breaks the camel's back. You can't use that as the reason for which he did what he did. It was more likely that he had repressed a number of things, suppressed a number of things, was going through a lot of stress himself. Now, unfortunately, he did not know how to deal with his anger without acting out. Yes, like you said, we have a patriarchal society that says a man is in charge of his family, and the only way he disciplines them is not by caning them, is by beating them. So we beat children.
And
we
caning is
beat
different
our-
from beating.
Caning is different from beating. We beat our wives. We beat our children because, as far as we're concerned, that's the only way we can get them to conform. Yet we know, and it has been proven over time, that whipping, caning, and beating is a poor form of reinforcement. It does not establish any good behavior. It doesn't even help the person who's perpetrating the act, because quite a number of times we look at the victims, but we do not think about the person who's doing this.
What may be going on
Now,
with them?
this person, the batterer or the assaulter himself, has problems. Because when you're angry to the point of lashing out, it means you're dealing with things that you do not know how to handle. And you have decided that the only way out is by expressing my anger on another person.
Now, the tongue as the deadliest weapon of, or one of the deadliest weapons of domestic violence. Are men, I want us to twist this a little. I'm sure some men will be happy. Are men at the receiving end of this tongue lashing from their women? And I wonder what it does to a man's confidence at the end of the day. I want the psychiatrist to address this, and then we'll come to me.
Okay, the thing is that women are tended to be more verbal than men. They talk faster, they talk more, they are more social than men are. And here's the thing, when you're in a verbal argument, what is going on is the woman says 10 words and the guy gets one in between. So this is what happens. He's losing the verbal fight, and he knows he cannot win. He doesn't have the skill set, he doesn't have the capacity to win. So this is what begins to happen to his ego. He starts to think, okay, look, this woman does not disrespect me. This woman does not respect me. This woman sees me as below the kind of person she should be married to. That means maybe I'm not even a man. Maybe I'm even less than a man. I'm less than a boy. So you know what? That means that I'm useless.
And all of these thoughts are transmitted
And
within seconds.
And this is going through his mind unconsciously. He's not consciously thinking about it. And so he's like, you know what? So my ego is down. So I'm useless. I'm emasculated. So how do I get my manhood back? I beat her up. And she stops talking, because we always are quick to talk about spousal violence and we talk about physical abuse. We forget emotional. We forget about verbal insults. And the truth is, speaking from personal experience, what I heard as a 7-year-old has stayed with me till this age that I am in than the physical abuse I suffered from my mother. Okay, they called it discipline. But it was child abuse. So, beating. So, but the thing is that what was spoken to me as a 7-year-old, I replay them in my mind from time to time. And sometimes I have to trick myself into believing that, look, that person didn't know what they were saying. So we're saying that the tongue is mightier than the sword, they say. And the truth is, in spousal abuse, the tongue carries more weight. Yes, men tend to become more physically violent, though there are some women that are physically violent. But the truth is, the tongue carries a lot of weight. The truth is, there are quite a number of fights, a number of things that could have been de-escalated by someone choosing to keep quiet or by someone choosing to leave. But that is still no excuse to beat anybody.
Wow, that's a big one. All right, before I come to, before we bring in Foladele, I think, Mary, you have to answer to this just briefly before we bring in Foladele. What do you think about verbal abuse? What's the place of all of that culminating into the violence we see or the physical battery we see sometimes?
Well, the worst thing that can happen to any individual is to couple up with someone who has low self-esteem, be it man or woman. Because when you suffer verbal abuse, we all suffer verbal abuse. Even at work, the man goes through that. Does he beat up his boss? If the boss is a female, he's not likely to beat her up.
But isn't he conditioned to accept that in the workplace, for example?
But not conditioned to accept that at home.
In the home where he's supposed to be in charge, where he's supposed to be the Lord, and you now make him look small.
Yeah, that takes us back to the root cause, which is still the culture and traditional attitude. If he had been able to contain verbal abuse at work, why is it so difficult to contain that same at home?
All right, fine. That's
beyond that. If somebody abuses you verbally, it's wrong. But let's flip the coin. There are also many women who have gone to their grave earlier than necessary due to neglect. So where the woman has the skills or strength of verbal abuse, the man also abuses her by non-verbally, where he keeps away from her, does not relate to her, does not show that tender loving care which a man should give to the wife. So she carries on like that, emotional pain and trauma, unto the point where she goes into cancer. And we think it's really cancer. She goes through this and ends up in the grave. Nobody talks about that. And it's the worst kind of violence, if you ask me.
Okay, we'll come back to this because there are lots of dimensions to this and it's debatable if you put it on the platform. Let's bring in Foladele to give us a perspective on social media, how Nigerians are reacting to this. Fola, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie. Good morning, Adesoji. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning.
Okay, let's find out what people are saying about this very sad one. Jessica Lozier says, marital rape, spousal abuse, in bracket, mental, physical, and emotional, are what women in Nigeria see as normal. Erudite says, Nigerian men don't like domineering or defiant wives, hence the domestic abuse, which often leads to failed marriages. And he continues and he says, a life imprisonment should be a punishment for domestic violence in Nigeria. Rebel says, seems domestic violence is now a thing in Nigeria. Someone replied saying, I believe it has always been that way. Social media is just giving it more light and awareness. Amira B says, Nigeria needs to take this issue of domestic abuse and violence seriously. Victims need to be compensated for such emotional trauma at least. Nwabialuije says, I'm always in shock when I see these beatings. Or what is really the problem? Is it pressure or the ladies don't see this? Sunday Roland says, so many women have lost their precious lives through domestic violence in Nigerian homes. So many women have lost their eyes, legs, and arms.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So I actually have a question for each of you, but let me start with Mary. So something that people tend to say is that you usually see signs while you're dating, for example, that the person would probably or most likely be violent towards you in marriage. But is that always true? I mean, I find it hard to believe that everybody who goes through domestic violence was blind while they were dating. So is it possible that maybe sometimes you don't see signs?
You really will see signs. The chances are the signs will be there are higher than they are not. But you know, they say love is blind, but marriage is an eye-opener. So many people are actually like blind when in the dating stage. When you get married, everything comes up. It's like you've been with a total stranger. You are now married. There's nothing to pretend about. It's me and you forever. So the real you comes out. And that's what now goes on. If it's a violent man, you would have seen a trace of that when you were dating. But love covered it for you. But love probably is not sustaining it when you are married, because it's now a time of truth telling. You all have to be open to one another. But at the dating stage, you are all trying to, you brush your mouth, you brush your teeth, you try not to, you know, all
putting
those things, putting your best foot forward.
Yeah.
And when you're in marriage, I think we should keep the game, we up the game better. If you are violent, you should tone it. You shouldn't even try it in marriage, really. There's really, you know what? Don't.
Okay.
What if ordinarily you don't like to cook as a woman, for example? You know, but when you meet this guy, you want to show him your wife material, and when you get to okay.
Yeah. Before I go though, I just so you know, naturally or biologically speaking, or whichever the word is now, men are believed to be the stronger sex, right? I think we can all agree on that.
Oh,
okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So because before, you know, gender equality these days.
Well, the truth is, physically, yes, but emotionally,
yes, that's what I mean.
I would doubt that.
So physically, I'm speaking physically. Yeah. So what must be going through the woman's mind when she's the one being violent towards the man, who is supposed to be physically stronger?
The thing is that when a person is angry, reason is suspended. Logic goes out of the window, and all she knows to do is, look, I've said a lot of verbal abuse at this guy. He doesn't get it, so let me injure him. So you hear women who poison their husbands. You hear women who use weapons when they fight, use knives, use sticks. I know of someone who broke 2 mopping sticks on her husband's leg and head, broke his laptop, but of course he injured her very seriously. So we're saying that, yes, women are supposed to be physically weaker, though there are some women that are stronger than their husbands.
We've seen that. All right, I think we have to go on a break now. We're pressed for time. So thank you. All right, thank you. Let's go on a break. It's getting more interesting in the house, talking about spouses here and here. We'll be right back.
All right, you're welcome back. It's good to have you. We're talking spousal violence this morning. Now, is domestic violence necessarily a crime against a gender or an individual? We need to really clarify that. Our guest right now, psychiatrist Adesoji Banji, and Mary Koku is a woman and children advocate. Now, let's even talk about woman on man violence. You know, let's you know, talk about this further. I pin down some aspects that you know, constitute violence by the woman on the man. And I was surprised at some of the points: excessive possessiveness, jealousy, constant accusations of being unfaithful, threats to hurt or kill, destroying and you know, the husband's belongings, and all of that. Now, when a woman does this to the man, is it coming a deliberate place to really make the man small, or is it a problem of her own, you know, struggling with personal issues herself, and it's playing out in all of this?
Well, of course, individuals have different responses to stress. So here's the thing. Sometimes it's an issue of the woman has problems herself. She's dealing with anxiety, she's dealing with depression, she's dealing with low self-esteem, she's dealing with issues with her children. And then you have this man who's supposed to be there for you, who's supposed to help you carry your weight, who's supposed to be the lord of the house, to protect you, and he's not pulling his weight. Now, instead,
especially if he doesn't have a job.
especially,
don't
even ask. Don't even ask.
That's when finances
That's
are
like pouring
involved.
petrol on fire.
Yeah.
So now you have the situation, and you're like, look, how do I get this man to understand me? So you try to talk to him, but he waves it off. You try to talk to him, he waves it off. So you're building a lot of anger inside, a lot of angst, a lot of frustration. And so the woman goes, how do I get back at him? Because it's always a question of revenge. This man has hurt me. He doesn't understand what I'm going through. He does not see it as I see it. If I continue like this, I may just die like my mother died, or died like my auntie died. So let me get back at him and let him know how bad I feel. So they say hurting people hurt others.
Hurt others.
So she starts to hurt him. So she starts to do whatever it is she knows he doesn't like. Because like we said, this is intimate partner violence. And that means this is the person who knows you best. The person knows your weak spots, knows your buttons, knows your triggers. She knows what to say to get you off the ledge. So she starts to press and press and press, just so that you can feel as badly as she feels. Unfortunately, it's unhealthy, because bitterness, like someone says, is drinking poison and hoping another person dies. You are not going to get better. You are not going to feel better, because then the man resorts to violence, or it resorts to, okay, I'm going to deny her sex, which is one tool quite a number of men use.
Which women use too.
And a lot of women use it.
And
And a lot of women use it. And it's like, okay, look, I'm going to deny you, I'm going to deny you sex. Then the next thing, okay, I'm going to deny you my presence in the house. So it goes off for the weekend, goes for 1 month, goes for 1 year. The people that left their houses for 10 years, and they say daddy walked out of the door and said he was coming back. We've not seen him 10 years after. So it's about people trying to let out their anger, medicate it by making other people feel hurt. And it doesn't work.
All right, let's, Mary, let me come back to you. You mentioned earlier on that when you were talking about, let's go back to the root cause of some of these things, you mentioned the issue of tradition. Now, if we have to put it on the platform, Africans are different from Europeans or Americans, as the case may be. Some people have argued that the lifestyle that is making people to have this spousal, that is even westernization, not even about the problems with tradition. What do you say? How do we, how is the mix of being Western and being African, how is that clash really sparking up something more negative than positive for us?
Well, you see, when we talk about traditional cultures and all these traditional attitudes, really, it exists in the Western world anyway. Violence is all over. But the difference here is that they've got laws backing them up. So you would think seriously before you initiate an act of violence.
Because there are consequences.
Because there are consequences. Now, in Africa, most part of Africa, Nigeria in particular, you have these traditional cultures. So, for instance, let's even go to in Yoruba land. A Yoruba woman calls, see, you hear words like, is it Olowo Orimi?
Olowo Orimi.
Olowo Orimi means he who owns me.
Yeah.
So it's like he's paid my dowry.
That is what it
certain
really means.
culture. That's what it means. It means he
is that
who
what it
owns
means,
me.
Banji?
So the
I
man
think it means that
owns you.
this is the person
Sorry,
who
Mary.
paid the price.
This is the person who
Who
paid
paid
my
your
the
dowry.
price.
No, which
Okay.
would mean that this is the person who sacrificed for me. It depends
Well,
on how you
well,
look at
well,
it.
It could mean anything, but,
Literally,
yeah,
this
Mary.
is what I understand it to be.
Because I thought, I mean, I would
But
have
is anything
imagined,
wrong with that?
I would
There's
have imagined
there's
that
nothing
it
wrong
is
with
some
that.
kind of
It's
terms
supposed
of
to-
endearment.
Of
Yes,
endearment and
that's
honor,
what it's
yes.
supposed to be.
Okay.
But it's supposed to be earned.
Okay.
You
do
see,
you earn that?
you earn it. It's like giving some kind of adjuling to somebody who you have respect for, right? But some of the men now, some of them now it gets into your head to feel, I actually own you. You see, that's where the power, you see, the culture naturally puts the woman there.
Even religion.
Even religion.
That's what God said.
Even right from the Bible. So if you look closely, you understand that even we, the women, in raising our children, we raise boys and girls differently.
Good.
And we feel we are raising our girls, preparing them for their kings. But we are not raising the kings worthy of these princesses. And that's where the problems starts from homes. You are raising princesses. You're not raising kings worthy of your princess. So why can't we think back and say, okay, we begin to say, I'll teach my boys to cook. Not because of me or him, not because of he won't get married tomorrow, but because of himself. He needs to feed, because he doesn't leave your house and starts getting married immediately.
Now, but back to the African society, wasn't it always like that? Mary, let me cut in here. Wasn't it always that way, where society prepared both sexes really for the future? And we didn't have the concept of divorce, really wasn't part of us anyway.
It wasn't. It was never part of our culture.
Parents
Doesn't that go back to
lot.
the issue of West, clashing with
the tradition?
No.
tradition?
If you recall, he said a lot of knowledge. People have gotten much more knowledge. So when you now have more knowledge, you begin to understand that, look, I shouldn't be put here. I can actually chair the board meetings. You
Okay,
see,
Banji,
when such awareness
sorry, let me
starts,
bring it to Banji now.
there's
Now,
some kind of conflict. The man wants to continue to be the king and remain in charge. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's now the approach.
Okay, Mary,
And how the
let
other
me
one
bring
receives
Banji
it.
in here.
Yes.
This knowledge, could it be knowledge that pops
Pops
up?
up. Okay.
In the case of the woman, for example, more women are getting educated today, are earning more in many instances and all of that. Is that playing out in itself?
Let me say this. Let me say this.
Yes.
I actually think women run society. Women raise culture. In my house, everybody cooked, everybody washed. There was no man job, there was no woman job. My mom woke up at 5 a.m. and you were awake when she was awake. There was no story about that. So the question is, the women's lib movement started off as a reaction to repression by these patriarchs who were like, look, a woman's place is this, a woman's place is that. And we've said culture and religion and stuff. And the truth is, sometimes knowledge that is not complete is a problem, a big problem. Semi-literacy sometimes is worse than ignorance. Pure. I mean, ignorance is bliss. So for me, the question is, what religion says you should beat your wife? Not one.
Not one.
None.
What religion says you should treat your wife as a slave? Some people may say some do, some, but there's none that explicitly says that. So we're saying that. So where did we get this impression that culture and tradition and religion says that? It is that, okay, we've had a male dominance, and now these women are saying, you know what, let's go back to the original intent of this. And the original intent was that it was supposed to be, marriage was supposed to be about two equals coming together to form one couple. And so, I'm a Christian, so the Bible says that, and the two shall become one flesh. Nobody wakes up in the morning and beats himself. So if you truly understood your religion, then you would know that beating your wife is beating yourself. And it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, however,
so now the knowledge
but if I deduce from that,
Yes.
Dr. Banji, the point there is that this two become equals, but there is first amongst equals.
Good. So this is how I say it.
Mary laughs.
So look, there's first among equals. This is how I say it. That the man is Lord, but the woman determines the temperature of the palace. She's the thermostat.
Say that again. I like
The
to
man
hear
is
that.
Lord. The man is Lord in his palace, but the woman determines the temperature of that palace. And a king who has no AC in his palace will either strip himself naked or walk out.
What imagery? I mean, that.
So we're saying that, yes, there's first among equals, totally true. But wisdom says that if I know that if I don't treat this woman right, this place will become too hot for me to handle and I'll have to leave. I mean, self-preservation just says, please, I need to do whatever it is that keeps the peace.
So wisdom becomes profitable.
So wisdom becomes profitable to direct. I mean, Proverbs keep saying about that living with a nagging wife is better to go and live on a roof than live with a nagging wife. Because we're saying that if you don't treat your wife right, you will not live in a peaceful home. It's just simple. But quite a number of us were raised in an environment where you saw people seemingly get away with it. But you did not follow the issue long term, because quite a number of people are like, okay, yeah, this man beat his wife, got away with it, had children. But 40 years down the line, The children will have children, and they will invite their mothers. She will do 3 months and collect money and collect George and do a mugo and go back home. The father is retired. He lives off whatever the mother gets. And so the truth is, when you think you are eating your cake and having it, you will pay the price, but you'll be paying the price further down the line, and nobody will see and say, oh man, this guy is paying the price.
Mary, Dr. Banji said something earlier that, yes, because of social media, we're getting to hear about this more and more and more and more. Let's, this discussion is actually within the ambits of marriage. So maybe we should just keep it that, that way. Yeah. Now, the tendency, the excitement that builds up towards getting married, towards the wedding, is that overshadowing the real issue, which is the marriage itself? Are people really preparing for marriage instead of this grand preparation for the wedding, where you call, a kind of arrangement, and then you get married, and then the real issues are there.
In fact, I had this conversation with a friend, Betty Rabo, last week. And it was the same issue we're discussing. This whole young ladies, are they getting married, or are they just jumping into marriages? And it's all about fanfares, get big event center, do all kinds of dramas. And that is a marriage. What you have, because after the wedding comes the marriage. And a whole lot of them spend off their earnings, borrowing even, to have this grand wedding. So domestic violence may even kick off right after the wedding, because you're now having to deal with financial struggles, because you have spent much more than necessary for your wedding.
I have debts to pay.
Yeah, so you have debt to pay. So you kick off a marriage with worries about financial stress, struggles, and debt to pay, and then the man starts thinking, you made me borrow this money and all of that. See, that's a problem. So we need to really think seriously about this kind of marriages.
Yeah, Mary, in fact, I would have loved we continue with this talk, but we don't have all the time right now. But Mary Koku, thank you very much for coming on this program.
Thank you so much for having us. I wish we had enough time to say, so what is the way forward? How do the two parties, mend fences so that you don't have violence in the homes?
We'll leave that for everyone's thoughts. However, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Such great insights.